Bet horse racing on DRFTV. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hi everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski here, taking a look at one of two stakes races on Saturday at Oaklawn Park. This is race 7, the Poinsettia Stakes, going just 5.5 furlongs on the dirt track for fillies and mares, 3 and up fillies and mares, it should be noted. And there are a few 3-year-olds in this field, Craig, including one in particular coming off a layoff, the number 7 Pretty Birdie. She's going to have to face plenty of pace pressure because we'll talk about the pace projector in just a bit, but it does seem like there's quite a bit of speed in this 5.5 furlong sprint.
Yeah, it sure does. We'll talk about it in the pace projector. It doesn't have that fast pace flag, but I'll explain why when we get there.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty competitive affair. The morning line favorite is the number 2, Caribbean Caper, as we throw up the field for this race. 8 runners signed on, and Caribbean Caper is pegged as the 5-2 choice over that number 7 Pretty Birdie that I just mentioned at 3-1. But you can make a case for a number of runners in this race. Maybe the 2 long shots are a little bit tough to build a case for, the 4 and 5, but the other 6 runners in here all have a serious look at this. And speaking of that pace projector, Craig, let's check it out, because it does seem like there are quite a few runners that want to attain forward position in here, and Pretty Birdie's one of them, but she's got plenty of speed drawn to her inside.
Right. Pretty Birdie has shown a lot of high speed, though it should be noted lately it's been at longer distances, 7, 6.5. Ari Oakley draws the rail. She's a quick one. This is one, if it wasn't at 5.5 furlongs, it would 100% have that red hot pace flag. But at races less than 6, we don't like to use that because oftentimes the speed still goes on to run well and often win even when the pace gets hot.
Before we get to some of the main contenders, let's take a look at one of the new features in Timeform US, the Finish Projector, and you can access this by going to the new version of Timeform US that is launching on the DRF mobile site. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen that screenshot of where to find the tab in your DRF mobile PPs, and you can toggle over to the Finish Projector from the Pace Projector. And Craig, this is sort of a visual representation of the power picks that people might be familiar with in the Timeform US PPs, and just kind of shows the relative positions of the runners that the Timeform US algorithm picks in this race. And the number 2 Caribbean Caper is the one that is projected to come out on top.
Yeah, not a big surprise, though. I think neither one of us are all that high on her. We'll get to that a little bit later. But what I like here is it just does show some gaps between the horses as opposed to just that 1, 2, 3 listing.
And as you kind of were alluding to, that algorithm, it's not really expecting this race to fall apart, primarily based on that shortened distance of the race, 5.5 furlongs. So we'll see how that plays out on the racetrack. One of the runners that will be hoping it does not fall apart is the number 7 Pretty Birdie, and she is one of the 3-year-olds facing older horses in this field. Let's go all the way back to the springtime to take a look at her winning the Purple Martin Stakes. And I threw up this replay, right, Craig, because it is over this racetrack. She showed that she likes Oaklawn Park on this day, and this was sort of the start of a run of really good form for Pretty Birdie before things came to a screeching halt when she basically was eased in the victory ride over the summer.
There's no doubt she's a really fast horse on the Timeform US speed figures. She has speed figures as good or better than anyone in this field. What you do have to wonder about is when she gets some pressure. It hasn't worked out too well. The 2 really bad losses we see on those PPs have come in races with red fractions when she was pressed up front. And even so, even when she isn't pressed, it's not like she has the most heart in the lane. She often has clear, easy leads and isn't able to finish the deal with only 1 win in those 5 we're showing.
Yeah, one thing I will say about her is that she is a rocket out of the gate. You might notice in the Timeform USPP is she always gets the first call at the start. And I know sometimes people don't want to put a whole lot of stock in those, but you can go back and watch the replays for yourself. She always breaks like a shot in these races. So she figures to be prominent early. I wouldn't put too much stock in that last performance when she ran so poorly in the victory ride. She had a shoe repair in the paddock that day. I remember NYRA's paddock analyst Maggie Wolfendale was basically putting up a red flag saying this horse reacted very badly to that happening. And, she's not wearing the right kinds of shoes. Don't put stock in this effort, however she runs. So she's coming off a long layoff here, and if she gets back to her better efforts, she could be pretty dangerous in this spot. Another 3-year-old that will be facing her older horses is the number 1, Ari Oakley, going out for the Steve Asmussen barn. She's another one that's been in pretty good form, Craig. She came off a layoff from the summertime last time out at Churchill Downs to get the job done in an allowance race. And notably, that was going 5 furlongs. So she's one that's already proven that she can handle these shortened sprint distances.
She is. The one negative I would have for her is the bunch of blue fractions that we see where she's kind of had things her own way in races where she's up close and the pace is slow. She's in good form. Her speed figures are a little lower than some others, but it's also possible that those slow paces contributed to that.
And another runner that figures to be involved at the pace in this race is the number 8, I'm the Boss of Me, another horse coming off a victory. And let's take a look at that race when she won last time out at Delaware Park. Obviously not facing the strength of competition that she's going to be meeting in this Poinsettia Stakes on Saturday. But you had to like the visual of this race, Craig, as she just blasted off out of the gate early, opened up on the field on the backstretch, and really never looked back.
She's quick, no doubt, and I do like the post that she draws. She's not going to be stuck inside like some others we've looked at in here. I imagine it's going to be her and Pretty Birdie probably getting the jump on the others, getting that forward position. The question I have is she good enough? And the speed figures say she probably is not.
Yeah, it's definitely a step up in class for her. Might be the opposite for the number 2, Caribbean Caper. She's one that might be getting some class relief off her last race because she faced males last time in that Thanksgiving Classic at Fairgrounds. And they're not the kind of runners that you're going to see in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, but horses like Surveillance and Heart Rhythm are pretty hard-knocking male sprinters, and she was not disgraced running against them, finishing 4th, beaten just 3 lengths. She's a runner that's been trying to work her way back off a couple of layoffs. She was in such good form last year when she went 5 for 5. 2 losses in 2022, Craig, but maybe now that she's second off the layoff, we're going to see a better effort.
Yeah, her speed figures fit in here. We can see a couple 112s, 2 and 3 back. She's the question is form. She was red hot. Obviously, something went wrong. You don't want to lay a horse off almost a year off of 3 wins. So I'm going to lean more towards that she's maybe not quite the horse she was back then. And at a short price, I'm not sure I'd be interested in her.
One of the reasons that she shows strong speed figures is when I took these screenshots, I did have the weight adjustment turned on in Timeform US, and she is getting into this race with a bit of a weight break, which is going to inflate those speed figures that you see in the past performances a little bit. She's carrying just 115 pounds compared to 122 on a couple of the horses we just talked about, Ari Oakley and Pretty Birdie. So even though they're 3-year-olds, they're not getting any kind of weight break in this race under the allowance conditions. One concern I have with Caribbean Caper, Craig, is, well, number 1, she's listed as the favorite on the morning line, and runners for this barn, Al Stall, typically do take money, and I threw up a trainer stat for him specifically at Oaklawn Park, and he just seems like a pretty popular trainer. His horses tend to go off at relatively short prices, and that's been the case at Oaklawn, and they don't quite win at the rate that you would expect based on price.
Yeah, he is known more as a Kentucky and especially a fairgrounds kind of guy where he does a lot of his damage. It's not like he doesn't win at Oaklawn, but he sure does seem to get overbet.
Let's take a look at a race again from early this year, back in January. It's where Sarah Harper and Novel Squall faced off in an allowance race back on January 9th. And obviously this was a pretty long time ago, some 11 months, but I wanted to throw up this replay because they faced off against each other going over this Oaklawn racetrack. And Craig, I think the big question with Sarah Harper is, clearly off a performance like this, she makes a lot of sense in this race, but you have to question the current form that she's in because she came off the layoff this summer and just hasn't really gotten back to the top speed figures that she ran early in her career.
No, that's always a red flag for me. She was looking good at the end of her 3-year-old season, running almost at that 110 figure. And since coming back as a 4-year-old, she's yet to match her best figure. So to me, that's a big negative. She should be getting faster, not a little bit slower.
I will say that she faced a pretty good rival in Center Isle, too, back at Keeneland. She was outdueled by that foe. And then last time out, she was basically very compromised at the start. It's a little difficult to see the starts of those 7 furlong races at Churchill, but she broke over a length slowly. And for a horse like her to have to kind of rush up and then be rated by her rider after that, it's just not going to be the right trip for Sarah Harper. She's one that strikes me as the kind of horse that will really appreciate this turn back to 5.5 furlongs. I think the shorter, the better for her. I just wonder what kind of trip she's going to pull here with so much other speed signed on. And that probably is not going to be a concern for the number 3 Novel Squall, who was beaten by Sarah Harper in that replay that we just showed. But that was kind of the start of a run of really good form for Novel Squall earlier this year, Craig. She just kept improving her speed figures, put forth a huge effort at Keeneland 2 back, and obviously something went wrong in her last race. But if she comes back in top form, she's going to be dangerous here.
She is. She should get a good setup. She's shown in last in the pace projector. That's not so much due to the fact she doesn't have speed. She's been able to lay close when she needs to. It's just the fact there's so much other speed in the race that's going to be positioned ahead of her. The red layoff line, been off for over 6 months, is a bit of a concern. But when you scroll back through her PPs, you'll see this same barn was able to get her to win as a first-time starter. So they know how to get them ready off layoffs, particularly this filly.
Yeah, John Ortiz's numbers off layoffs are just okay. The ROI isn't great. He has a win percentage. It's around 14, 15% with this specific kind of layoff on the dirt. So we'll see what we get from her if she's ready for her top effort. But she does figure to get the right kind of pace setup coming from off it in this Poinsettia Stakes. So let's throw up our picks for this race. And obviously, Craig and I agree here. We both went with the number 3 Novel Squall, just thinking that she's probably going to work out the right trip.
Yeah, I thought I was being clever. I make it a point not to look at your selections, but we landed on the same horse. I think it's due to pace. For me, it is. That's a big part of it. I think she'll come back ready to run, looking at her string of workouts, the fact she won first time out. And I just think she's going to get a great setup.
Yeah, I was kind of torn between her and the number 6, Sarah Harper, and I might have flip-flopped them if I had seen the morning line. I feel like Sarah Harper probably is going to be a much bigger price in this race. I feel like she's finally getting into the right kind of spot, so maybe she's more of my value play in this race, but I agree. Novel Squall is getting the right kind of setup, and she is dangerous coming back off the layoff in this Poinsettia Stakes on Saturday at Oaklawn Park. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.